All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Ken Rich, Director of Finance Services. We're going to spend just a few minutes here tonight finishing up our presentation with the financial management section and a few different laws that were passed during the previous session. When we talk about financial management, one of the things I want to do, I'm going to go back to something Tripp said earlier tonight, and that is that the board should be involved in the budgeting process and be a part of the accounting for the school. Well, that's true. You guys did, as board members, did just pass your budget for the this fiscal year, and you should have a good idea of where the revenues come from and how the overall about basically how you spend your money, how much goes to salary and benefits and how much goes to certain other areas. I think one of the things we talked about with Tripp's presentation with regards to staying in your lane is that you don't micromanage the budget. So it's not the board's role to decide how much we spend on a certain item, a certain budget line, or talk about any of those things in great detail. It should just be, these are the overall objectives or policies we want to see in place, and then you hire the superintendent and the CFO or the business manager to manage the actual day-to-day operations of the school and put the budget together. So just a few reminders here as we go into this section. How are schools funded? Obviously we're funded based on the number of students that we have. So average daily membership, that 3/4 average daily membership is a combination of quarters 1, 2, and 3 is how we're funded. We're going to look at some CFAM reports tonight. This is from our financial analysis and management software that we have here at APSRC. Just gives us a good picture of a school district situation. And we're looking at a small school district. I don't know which district this is. Jim just pulled one out, put it on the screen, and if I ask you what's going on in this district, the answer is we're losing students, we're losing enrollment. So I think this school was actually at 575 students in 2019. So we've lost a lot of students over the last few years. Anytime we lose students, then we got to make plans to how we're going to handle that. We're going to have less revenue coming in. So are we going to reduce our staff through attrition? Are we going to have to actually have a reduction in force? Hopefully not. Or are we going to cut some other types of expenses? But typically, most of our money is caught up in salary and benefits. So let's take a look at what's happening here. At the same time that the school was losing a few students, you can see that the staffing efficiency for the school district, the school actually employed a few more FTEs or full-time equivalents of licensed employees. So this doesn't tell the whole story, but it does tell you that we added employees while we were losing several students. Now it could have been that we were trying to do something really different and creative, trying to draw other students into our district. Maybe we added a CTE program in the high school or something like that. So I can't tell you the whole story. It also could be a categorical teacher because this report we're looking at does include categorical funds as well. But what we do here is we give you a student-teacher ratio, and in this district it's 1 licensed employee for every 11 students last year, and compare it to the matrix staffing goal of 1 to every 14.4 students. We make a comparison there, and you can see this district's at 76.8%. Now I can tell you that any school district that's over 80% is doing a pretty good job of with their staffing model, and they're trying to keep that in check. If you're over 90, you're doing a really good job. We have some districts in the state that are actually over 100%. Most of the districts in the state are over 80%. What I don't want you to do is go back and look at your situation and say, oh, we're in a terrible position because we're at 78 or 79%. That may not tell the entire story, so you want to get more information before you make that statement. The other thing that we need to take a look at with regards to teacher salaries is what percentage of our funding, our foundation funding, and our one-off salary funding goes to salary and benefits. So there's 2 extra pots of money now for teacher salaries. We have teacher equalization funds, and we have the LEARNS Act money. And so what we do in this chart here is we add those 2 one-off pots of money. So we add that to the foundation funding, and then we give the district the information with what percentage of our foundation funding plus teacher salary equalization plus LEARNS money are we spending on salary and benefits. And you can notice that in some years this district is up to over 90%. So that doesn't leave a lot of money left to take care of all the maintenance and operations of our school as far as facilities, our technology equipment, our curriculum, our books, our desk, all the needs that we have. So you got to really work to keep those things in line. And when we do see school districts get in trouble financially, it's not typically because they go out and spend a lot of money on things. It's usually because they spend a lot of money on people. And I understand the situation that you guys are in a school district, because there never seems to be enough people to do all the work. And if you ask any of your staff members if there's enough people, if they need more people, they're always going to say they could use more people. But the whole idea of being efficient and taking care of the taxpayer money, being good stewards of that money, the best thing we can do is have a good staffing model. That's the number one key from the beginning, and usually everything else takes care of itself. Let's take a look at a few acts tonight. We're going to look at Act 11 here. It requires all U.S. flags and Arkansas state flags to be purchased from a public entity. If you're using taxpayer funds, it must be manufactured in the United States of America. So the good news for you, you're probably in compliance before this law was passed, because 94% of the U.S. flags are manufactured in the United States, so probably won't be a problem there. Act 239, basically what this does, I'm just going to paraphrase, is the threshold for using an architect for a project used to be $100,000. Now it's $250,000. However, I doubt that many of you are going to go out there and build a facility without some kind of an architect plan, because there could be a lot of liability there if you did not have that in place. So it's $250,000 threshold for getting an architect. We're going to look at several Arkansas teacher retirement bills. And what you should know with these acts that were passed during the last session is every one of these acts are basically in favor of the retiree or the employee that's already working at the school. So there's not going to be any act that was passed that's going to be to the detriment of anyone that's in the teacher retirement system. We won't go over all of them, but we will take a look at a few. Act 52 provides that the teacher retirement system may prorate the number of contracted days when determining classification regarding contributory or non-contributory members. So what happens here is, in Arkansas, if you work over 185 days or more, then you are mandated to be a contributory member. Contributory members pay in 7% of their salary to the teacher retirement system. The school district, yourself, the board, pays in 15%. If you work 184 days or less, then you can have the choice of being contributory or non-contributory. What this act does is this: if a teacher gets hired in January of a school year, obviously there's not 185 days less, but they don't have the opportunity to be non-contributory, because that position, they can prorate that position normally would be 190 days, so that would allow them to be contributory. Act 55 permits a refund of some unused purchased federal service credit. This is going to be for military retirees, and once again it's in their favor because they can get a refund if they do happen to quit teaching there. Act 63 doesn't really do anything new, just puts into code some of the contributory service rates that we already have with the system. Act 64 updates some provisions for outsourcing. What you should know is if you outsource a service like food service or custodial work, that for the employees that are on the ground working in your school district every day, what you do is you receive a report from the company that you outsource with. They give you the salaries of all those employees that work on the ground each month, and you pay 4% of that salary amount into the Arkansas teacher retirement system. Act 77 allows you to do a split with regards to survivor benefits. So if I want to split that benefit between a spouse and a child, I can do that. Act 104 kind of basically just goes back. It doesn't change anything really. It kind of just lets everybody have a better understanding of the anti-spiking amount in the state of Arkansas. So you have when you're looking at the final average salary of an employee over 5 years to determine their final average salary, you have a limit on the amount of increase an employee can get in 1 year. I believe it's 5%. So this just kind of clarifies the anti-spiking amount. Act 107 is a cleanup bill. Act 125 is pretty interesting. It allows a member of the teacher retirement system to purchase a gap year. So a gap year is a year in which the employee actually did not work. An employee could take a year or 2 or even 5 years off and purchase those years they didn't work back into the system. Now they would have to pay in the 15% the district would pay in during that time, the 7% they would pay in, and also the actuarial amount of what that money would have made by the time they reached their retirement years. So it would be very expensive, maybe not be affordable to those persons. But the whole goal of this thing is teacher shortage, need to get teachers back into the system, right? That's what it's there for. And the final one we'll look at it tonight here, you probably will use at some point, Act 183, reduces the termination or separation period from 6 months to 4 months. So an employee can retire, not work for an education entity in Arkansas for 4 months, and go back to work, draw their full salary and their full retirement. So that's a change from 6 months to 4 months. Once again, the attempt there to get people into the system because of a lack of workers. Let's take a look at a few things in the LEARNS Act. First one is paid maternity leave, and this creates an option for districts and charters to offer paid maternity leave up to 12 weeks to their education personnel. So it's my understanding the rules are been basically written for this. They're right now being reviewed by the governor's office, I believe. Maybe will be available real soon. Notice the wording up to 12 weeks. So I didn't say you have to offer it for a full 12 weeks, but up to 12 weeks. And what this would do would allow the district and the state to partner. The school would pay for half of that time, and then the district would pay for half that time. So one of the things I think you need to maybe think about, I know some schools have already made their decisions whether they're going to participate or not. There's no right or wrong answer. You can use either one of those options, but a lot of people think it has to be the full 12 weeks. So it could be maybe up to 12 weeks. Well, it'd be 6 weeks. We choose 6 weeks, and the school would pay for 3 weeks, and the state would pay for 3 weeks. But watch for the rules on that. That should be coming out really soon. So, usually the rules are somewhat in line with the act, but we want to make sure. So watch out for those. Teacher minimum salary. Jim already said we're at $50,000 minimum salary for our classroom teachers. Schools, every district in Arkansas received that LEARNS Act money because they were in compliance with everything they needed to be to receive the funding. Every school district already received that funding for the 23-24 school year. But your superintendent did sign off on a sheet of paper that said we're going to be in compliance and do these things. So what do you have to do to get the LEARNS money? Every teacher has to have a contract of at least 190 days. Number 2, you can't adopt any personnel policies or put anything in the contract that gives the employee any more rights that are in state law. So what you should think about is this. Before the LEARNS Act, we had teacher fair dismissal. It was a very detailed law with a lot of rights. You couldn't put those rights back into a contract or your personnel policies locally. If you did that, that would exceed the rights that the employee has from the state level, and that would make you ineligible to receive the LEARNS Act salary funds. You can't have a waiver of the teacher salary requirements, and no traditional districts do have that waiver. And then you must adopt an employee salary schedule. So as you know, salary schedules can look a little differently than they did before. They don't have all the lanes and steps maybe that they had in the past. And we're going to talk more about salary schedule options in 2 weeks when we come back and meet with you again. But you must adopt a salary schedule, and it can be as simple as this. It could say every licensed employee will make at least $50,000, and every employee that was employed here last year in 22 will make at least $2,000 more. The final requirement here is that you must be in person on-site instruction for at least 178 days or 1,068 hours. So the requirement for the number of days is 178. That's called now a traditional calendar, and if you use hours, that's called an alternate calendar. So I know some of you in the 2 co-ops we're talking to tonight have adopted alternate calendars. So what this means is if you don't go to school 178 days or 1,068 hours, you don't get the LEARNS Act salary funds. So that means no more AMI or alternate method of instruction days. Now, one way you could still take some days off there is if you're an alternate calendar school and you have like 1,080 hours in your calendar and something comes up and you need to miss a day of school, and you reduce that, number of hours that you're going by six hours, you're still going to be in compliance with the law here to get the LEARNS Act money. Let's move to the Merit Teacher Incentive Fund Program. I think Jim mentioned it earlier. $10 million statewide would not provide a lot of money if every employee in the state was eligible for that. You can see who is eligible, and it's teachers, and teacher is defined as someone who spends at least 70% of his or her contracted time working directly with students in a classroom setting. So school, could be a subject matter specialist, it could be school counselor, it could be library media specialist or aspiring teacher, but 70% of that time in the classroom meeting with students. The employees here will actually apply for this. The rules are not out on this portion of the LEARNS Act either, but the employee would actually make an application, fill out an application. One of the things I want to point out to you is on this slide, a teacher is going to have to demonstrate outstanding growth in student performance. So, it's not going to be that a teacher kind of just puts together their own little portfolio about what they've done as an employee and apply for that money. It's actually going to be based on the value-added models that we have for teachers in place with regards to student test scores, prior student performance, that kind of thing. One of the things that it may do, it may limit who can qualify for these funds. Think about an art teacher. An art teacher is not a tested area, so we may not have value-added growth scores available for them to qualify for this. But once again, we are waiting on rules from the LEARNS Act, so hopefully this will be out soon. The last section here deals with shortage areas. So each year the Department of Education comes out with a list of shortage areas. Many times you'll see subject matters on there like special education, foreign language, those types of things. Usually there's 8 or 10 different subject areas on there, and there is a part of the law here that will provide for a teacher that works in one of those shortage areas to be able to qualify for up to $6,000 per year for a maximum of 3 years if they've graduated from a quality education program in Arkansas and they teach in those shortage areas. So it would previously been $3,000, moves up to $6,000, so it should be a good thing once again, but we're still waiting on the rules for that section as well. Sound like a broken record here on the LEARNS Act, but there's not many rules out yet on the LEARNS Act, but we are expecting those out really soon. As I had a conversation with the department employee this week that told me some of those are in their final steps, pretty much getting ready for approval. And of course, any questions about the LEARNS Act, you can go to that website, learns.ade.arkansas.gov. You can see a lot of information there about LEARNS Act. You can call us at APSRC. We'd be glad to help you with any questions that you have.